Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
The Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member company, Ewing Kessler Incorporated, providing mechanical and building control solutions for sustainable, energy-efficient building performance. This privately owned regional company is committed to relationships and service responsive to clients' needs. Learn more at ewingkessler.com and ekautomation.com.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Building a better workforce in Memphis. Tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Roy Smith from the Greater Memphis Medical Device Council. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Kevin Woods from Workforce Investment Network. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Glenn Fenter, from the Greater Memphis Alliance for Competitive Workforce. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So we want to talk about workforce efforts in part because Kevin has been on the show before talking about sort of those issues, but you're also on the board of the Shelby County School System. And I saw both of you a presentation that the Chamber had done to some site selection consultants. And talk about the importance. We've got a whole lot of things, but let's start with just talking about each organization. We'll start here. Your organization, what does it do and what is its history?
Well, our history really emanates from a couple of year process that the Chamber of Commerce and the Chairman's Circle and a number of other leaders in the region were involved in, trying to add some synergy and some momentum to a lot of the great work that's already occurring in the Memphis region. A lot of communities across the country are all facing the same difficulties with these workforce challenges, and many of them are approaching it with different strategies. I think the Memphis region's leadership was very wise in establishing GMAC as a catalyst to work with all of the other great efforts that are in place, but try to bring more synergy, more coordination, really focused on what the needs of business and industry really are, trying to translate those needs into our educational models, and in the process put our economy in a position to be fueled by the one most important component of any regional or local economy, which is talent, and then connect those jobs that we now have the appropriate educational models to provide back to the folks who live in our region and connect employers with great employees and watch our economy flourish.
And you work with how many partner organizations?
A lot.
Yeah, right.
Basically, we try to work with anyone who obviously appears to be moving in a positive direction to affect a workforce outcome. Okay,
and we'll talk more about many of the things you brought up, but Kevin, talk about your organization and what it does.
So the state of Tennessee has 13 local workforce regions. We're Area 13, responsible for workforce in all of Shelby and Fayette County.
Not to be confused with Area 51.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
that's a good clarification.
And so the city of Memphis, under Mayor Strickland's leadership, serves as our chief elected official, but it's through a consortium, all mayors, city mayor, county mayor, as well as Fayette County mayor, working collaboratively to try to help solve the workforce problems. Our number one goal is to make sure that the dollars we receive under the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act goes to impact people that need to go to work and impact employers that are looking for good talent.
And on a practical level, do you all do job training or do you point people towards job training?
So it's a combination, and different workforce development boards do it differently. Here in the city of Memphis, we're the board, and we also operate the one-stop shop systems where basically individuals that are looking for work and companies that are looking for that talent, we manage that process as well. Last year alone, we saw over 14,000 participants that were either looking for training or looking for employment.
And so how many did you train, give or take?
We trained over 7,000 individuals.
Of those, and the others you pointed towards?
We pointed toward other community partners.
Okay, we'll get back to some of that. But Roy Smith, you are medical devices, a huge industry in the Memphis area. The council, I think, focuses on a lot of things, but the workforce part of it, what is that?
That is our focus. The Memphis area has got a really vibrant medical device community. People have probably heard of Smith & Nephew or Medtronic or Wright Medical, but there are close to 50 medical device companies that account for directly and indirectly, 17,000 jobs in the greater Memphis area. They're very intense competitors. Usually they don't share a lot of time together comparing notes on things, but one thing that is a common need is the development of a skilled workforce, particularly in the areas of some high-tech manufacturing opportunities such as machining, quality assurance, metal finishing, even the packaging. The medical device industry is very specific, and the opportunity to support the ongoing needs of the industry and the ability to drive growth is going to be dependent upon getting skilled employees. And so that's a topic that all of these companies were willing to come together, create a council, and work with people like Kevin and Glenn and their organizations to help find the strategies to develop those skill sets.
So, and you all don't do direct training as an organization, or do you?
Well, we're on the front edge of that. One of the strategies that we're looking towards is developing an apprenticeship program, particularly for machinists, and then certificate programs on the quality and finishing side, and then trying to find the right mechanism for delivery. So we're on the front edge of determining that, but that's our direction.
All right, Bill.
So let's talk about the job fair as an institution, because when one of these announcements is made that Business X is coming to Shelby County and going to establish a presence here and hire people, we get the announcement soon after that there's a job fair. And if I understand the impetus of this, a lot of this is to say that the cattle call, where come all and apply for these jobs, may not always be the best fit for what we're trying to do. And also, our workers who have jobs may not realize that this is an opportunity for them to advance to another job. So Glenn, is the job fair kind of an outdated concept in terms of what we're trying to do?
Obviously, when we're able to understand the needs of our business community sufficiently that we know exactly what skill sets they're after and that they need to be profitable, then we should be implementing that knowledge into our educational models so that we have a steady stream of people being produced that can meet those needs. Mm-hmm. When you do a job fair, the idea that some of these high-tech skill sets would be walking around in the general public and show up at a job fair is not always that realistic. If we do our job appropriately, the need for a job fair will certainly be reduced. We need to know this stuff far enough in advance to create the systems to provide for the need. And then those immediate issues obviously are going to be alleviated.
Mm-hmm. Roy, is that something that would happen typically in the industry that you represent?
Well, I think the development of these skill sets, they're specific enough that there has to be an intentional effort on someone's part to say, I want to become a machinist and be able to work on a 5-axis mill and, understand everything that's going into that, from the standpoint of the technology, the design of the product, and that it takes effort and time to develop those skill sets. And so from that perspective, I think the point that Glenn was making, the development of the pipeline, it's a period of time. It doesn't just happen overnight. And so the ability to define those skills and to drive people towards being interested in a career in the medical device industry is what we're trying to work together to make happen.
If you think about the fact that the medical device industry is the largest export sector in the state of Tennessee in terms of volume, then why in the world would we not be investing our state and federal dollars in creating educational systems to support and grow that economy?
Mm-hmm. You want to pipe in there?
Only on the job fair piece, because I do think, Bill, that it will remain a part of our economic development model. When you have companies like Bass Pro that came to town, Wynn actually assisted them with the job fair, so they were able to find talent on the spot. But as we talk about jobs in the advanced manufacturing sector, eventually this city is going to get to the place where, because we're training so many individuals, that companies will host those events, because we want to be able to give individuals the opportunity to choose which organization that they want to go to work for. And so hosting those events where many companies can then pick those talented individuals that are out there in the market, we hope to one day to get there.
What is the impact for all of you, the Tennessee Promise program? The governor rolled out, a year ago now, that anyone in Tennessee would be guaranteed at least a community college experience at no cost. I think they've talked about 20 to 30% increases in applications to the community colleges. You ran Mid-South Community College across the river for 20-something years.
I worked there. I don't know if I ran it. There's probably some debate.
There's some debate, okay. But what's the impact of that initiative? I assume that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. I would start there because I have the numbers on how many Shelby County schools actually had to actually apply for the Tennessee Promise. 7,771 individuals actually applied for the Tennessee Promise. It was a huge uptick. Tennessee led the nation in number of high school seniors that actually applied for FAFSA. So what we're finding out is that—
Which is the financial aid form that would be part of this.
Exactly, which is a part of the process in order to get the Tennessee Promise. So what's happening is more kids are now seeing, because that burden of tuition is now removed, what Governor Haslam has allowed us to do is give these kids hope that college is a possibility.
Right.
And on top of that, what it's allowed us to do as a workforce board, where typically we would fund that tuition cost per individual, we're now able to use those dollars for wraparound services. So now we can remove other burdens like transportation, book costs, tools to go to an advanced manufacturing program.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Well, I think Kevin's exactly spot on. This issue of a skill deficit is not unique to Memphis. This is going on all over the country.
Right.
I think if you'll check today, Tennessee has established itself firmly as one of the leading states in implementing new systems to address those sorts of deficiencies. The Drive to 55 and the LEAP program that Senator Norris has sponsored, and obviously the Reconnect and the Tennessee Promise are all part of a package that really does put Tennessee in a very unique situation. Scholarships are the first step to break that financial barrier to access post-secondary education. But the most important piece is to make certain that we have the right programs in place for the scholarships to pay for. We've got to create the programs that support the medical device industry and all the other technological workforce needs that exist in our region. Our companies are competing globally today against companies with very cheap labor rates. If we're going to be competitive, our workforce has to be better trained and use technology more to their advancement.
Yeah.
Well, the Tennessee Promise and the Reconnect are both opportunities to help drive more vocational type training, right? And to the degree that we can do that and funnel those into the development of skill sets for employees to feed the medical device industry, if we do that, we're going to attract companies to come to Memphis, because the big OEMs, it's great to have your suppliers close by. It speeds up the time for doing business, resolving problems, working together to develop solutions to issues or designs for new products. So the more of that we can have, the better off we're going to be. But it's going to require developing, a sufficiency of skilled employees. And as we talked about, it just doesn't happen overnight.
And these jobs, you talked about an advanced machinist. I mean, they pay in what sort of range? So it's just people have some perspective on what we're talking about.
Well, I've heard some of the people on our council talking about the need for, paying a $5,000 relocation fee just to get a machinist to come to town. And they can make, 20 to, depending upon, the situation, up to $30 an hour. Yeah. So they're great jobs.
And what kind of training, how many, we talk about the time frame, and it doesn't happen overnight. How long does it take to get trained to be that sort of person?
Well, within 2 years, you can develop the capability of being a skilled machinist, and that sets the groundwork for being able to go into one of these companies. You may not be at the top end of the skill range, but that's why we're looking to develop an apprenticeship program to help facilitate that ongoing, past entry-level skill.
And we talk a lot on the show, because we have so many politicians on and come out of election season, the pilot programs and incentives, and critics of those kind of things talk about big tax giveaways and so on, and we're recruiting these companies. But the real, I think all of you guys know, some of the real dirty work and the difficulties of recruiting companies comes down to workforce, right? I mean, sometimes the incentive packages are, all the cities and counties are playing against each other, so that those kind of level out. Right. Yeah. But what kind of workforce can you deliver?
Our council is sponsored by the Bartlett Chamber, and I had the opportunity to participate in some of their efforts to woo a new company that was looking at Memphis. It was in the medical device realm. And they chose not to come to Memphis because there are concerns about the availability of the workforce.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's key.
Yeah.
And when we say availability of workforce, it's also about expanding the number of companies participating in that economic development project. What they assumed was even if they recruited took the talent from every company that existed, it still would not be enough for them to run their organization. So not only do we have to have people that are coming through a pipeline, we got to increase the number of organizations that are on the ground here that will also employ this. And I think Memphis is heading in the right direction to be that city where advanced manufacturing companies want to locate.
And you talked about it as a national problem, that there is also this trend back to some degree in some quarters of manufacturing moving back to the United States, because the labor in China, which was the big engine of people pushing things overseas, labor's gotten more expensive there. The shipping, there's difficulties. It's not a magic bullet for every company. So some companies, it make more sense to source here and do advanced manufacturing here. Right. But the country went through a period, I've read, that we didn't have a lot of manufacturing. So again, nationally, what are some communities that do it right? What have you learned looking at other places in terms of what needs to be done?
Well, the concept that you're describing is called reshoring.
Yeah.
Where companies are recognizing that all that they thought was green in the pastures overseas has turned out not to be quite as fertile a playground as they considered. Actually, there are communities all over the country that are trying to create models like that exists here in Memphis, and their states are trying to model a lot of their plans after the scholarship programs of Tennessee. So in that regard, I think we're well positioned. I do believe that the most critical factor to economic development, as you described, is the capacity of a community to create and sustain a workforce. And we are putting models in place that are going to demonstrate that we're moving in that direction. I just came back from a 14-state economic development conference in Florida. They did not talk about incentives. They did not talk about any other subject. They had three presentations. All of them were on workforce development.
Yeah.
So it is the hottest topic in economic development in the country.
And before I go back to Bill, a time frame for it, we talk about going in the right direction, a trajectory, a time frame in which we have, I don't know what the number would be, enough workers. When we have a plethora, I don't know, what is that target and what is that time frame?
I think Roy mentioned that it doesn't happen overnight. We did not get in this position in this country overnight. We over a couple of decades started systematically changing how we educate folks, and unfortunately a lot of the tech education models got left out. So we have to reinstitute those. The first step is to work with people like the Medical Device Council, discern exactly what they want in a skill set, and then start implementing those programs in our models that are already working, like TCATS and Southwest and William R. Moore and Mid-South Community College, and then taking those programs even further into the public school systems so you create this model, this string. Obviously, if I start working with a 9th grader today to try to prepare him to go to work for one of Roy's companies 5 years from now, that's a process that takes 5 years.
Yeah.
He also has occupations, though, that are much shorter in terms of the training required. Finishers, polishers, packagers.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of where we are today in a place like Memphis. Never before has this skill set deficit been so prevalent. So when we create models that impart those skills very effectively, we can transform people's lives by putting them in great jobs faster than ever before.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of having the right connections.
Right. Bill.
So when we got the Electrolux plant, when we got Mitsubishi, and when the old, in my day, Schlitzer Coors Brewery sold to City Brewing, and all of those places went to hire, we discovered the problem that you just outlined here. So are we at the point now where we're in front of that problem, or are we still responding?
Well, I think we're doing some of both. I think we're in front of it when we have groups that are consolidating their needs in the way that the Medical Device Council has. And again, we use them as a model for all of the sectors in the region to follow because they give us the right information. But then there may be companies who are relocating that we didn't know anything about. who come in and say we need 50 of these in the morning. Well, if it's 50 of something we can produce in the morning, like a forklift driver, that's easy. If they come in and tell you they need 50 accountants with 5 years of experience, that's a little harder to do.
Yeah.
You know, having the fact that Workforce Investment Network was a big player in partnership with Southwest Community College and helping to train and get individuals ready for Electrolux, Mitsubishi, and others, it's going to continue to be an ongoing process. I tell my business services team all the time, it's not where you engage a company's deploy a workforce solution and you're done. It's a constant engagement with that organization to make sure that you're constantly feeding that pipeline, making sure when there's turnover that you're constantly feeding them new pipelines of individuals. We are engaging to change the narrative into what's something called a work-ready community, where we're actually saying in the next 3 years we want to have at least 3,000 individuals trained in career readiness certifications. In partnership with GMAC, we're saying we're not going to wait on the companies to get here. We're actually proactively training. And once we have those number of individuals trained and companies recognizing that certification as a stamp of approval, we will be able to label Shelby County as a work-ready community.
Roy, in terms of site selection, it looks as if we're not talking about assembling parcels of land anymore. The workforce has to be here, or the folks who are in the businesses that you represent, they want that to be here before they make the decision.
It's a big point on the checklist for the site selection, folks. They have to know, because in a high-tech manufacturing environment, you need those specific skill sets, right? I mean, it's not just load the robot and then everything's taken care of from there. Those skill sets are needed. The time frame, we talked a little bit earlier about vocational training.
Right.
I think there's a renaissance that's going to take place across the whole United States, but it needs to start here, and that's what we're working on.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there is a need, and I mentioned the need of the medical device industry. Is now. Those companies could use skilled employees, and they're out searching for them wherever they are. But developing a pipeline of those will ultimately result in the ability to even grow this industry, not just sustain it.
Right.
How is our mobility among workers? Do our skilled workers, are they locked into one job and not willing to look around? Or do they realize that there are more of these opportunities?
Well, we want to definitely establish career pathways. One of the first things we go when we're engaging companies is we talked about the ability to, one way to sustain employment and reduce turnover is quality wages. We don't talk about that enough, but we need to be able to pay employees an amount to keep them there. We'll have individuals that may leave a job for a 50-cent raise because it matters in their homes. But what we're doing in partnership with Medical Device Council and GMAC is we're developing career paths. GMAC has received investments to help where we can show these individuals what is it like to start here and end up somewhere else. So we believe that type of partnership, showing them career paths to earning more, maybe not today, but later, is going to be very meaningful for these individuals.
We've talked a lot about the community colleges, partly because Tennessee Promise and so on, but putting your Shelby County School Board member hat on.
Okay.
And Glenn mentioned the country dropped vocational training in high school and middle school for whatever reason.
Right.
What is Shelby County Schools doing to address this at a younger age?
Fascinating question, and I'll be brief because I know Glenn will want to jump in here, is that we have to start in middle schools, okay? We have to make sure that we're putting things in place that actually lead to them getting that training, understanding what advanced manufacturing. We host an advanced manufacturing day in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, so people will know what these jobs look like before they get there. So we are doing some work there, but I know Glenn is partnering with us also, and want to see if you had a question.
Well, let me before I get to Glenn, okay. But I mean, is there a whole thing too? Just because you're maybe both of you.
Okay, good.
Manufacturing isn't cool.
No, absolutely right.
Manufacturing is cool.
No, I know, but I mean,
right.
you're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids.
And only because I know that there's some partnership where we're with the LEAP grant and Senator Norris that I know Glenn gets really excited about talking about. But absolutely, I'll take the opportunity to tell you that Shelby County School sees this as a very important factor. Only 54% of our students actually go off to college. And our question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we doing for the others that aren't choosing college? Right. And we have to make these profession cool and keep them here in Memphis.
We have to redefine success. This is not about just sending kids to a 4-year university track. This is about, can we put them in a position to find a great job? The ultimate litmus test of any educational model should be, does it lead to a great job? Okay. And if you go to the Shelby County Schools today, you're going to see 4 CTE centers that are offering courses this semester in partnership with the TCAT that are college courses. They get high school and college credit, and they're directly aligned with the needs of workforce. if we're fortunate in receiving funding that we've requested from the governor and Senator Norris, you're going to see 8 sites across the region by next fall.
All right, I do a shameless plug for this thing that WKNO is helping to sponsor.
That's
it's
right.
the kids with the video cameras. Can you talk about that real quickly?
It's a fantastic program focused on 8th graders. We've got 8 schools in the community where we are providing them with Go cameras, Pro Go, whatever the term is. GoPro. Okay. And these students are working with professionals that are facilitating their production of a video. Those videos will be released for public viewing.
On
There'll be a
February 17th, yeah.
public voting. We're going to have a great ceremony for awards to look at all these videos. And the focus is manufacturing is cool. These jobs are no longer the old blue-collar, nasty, hot jobs that our parents and our grandparents dealt with. These are great working environments. They pay tremendous wages, and they are transformational, particularly in communities where poverty is an issue, and short-term education can put these folks in a great connection to get those jobs.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We're out of time. I cut you off, Roy. I apologize we couldn't get back to you, but thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.
Thank you for having me.
Support for Behind the Headlines is provided in part by the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member company, Ewing Kessler Incorporated, providing mechanical and building control solutions for sustainable, energy-efficient building performance. This privately owned regional company is committed to relationships and service responsive to clients' needs. Learn more at ewingkessler.com and ekautomation.com.